Why do you suck at machine gunner? Many have tried and failed to truly harness the power of the machine gunner role, despite the plethora of guides on the internet. Unfortunately, these MG guides ultimately fall flat on their face to achieve their objective. When I say this, I don't mean they have inaccurate information. They simply do not give sufficient information to effectively play the MG role. Many of the YouTube guides simply go over the equipment, vaguely talk about positioning, suppression, and your more defensive playstyle, but these are all just general tips, and do not get me started on the internet wisdom of Reddit, which often just tells you to track your effectiveness as a MG through the bullets fired per round. When you get into the game, you realize you're just as lost as you were before you watched the guides or read that thread. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of someone who may soon be you, the new machine gunner, eager and ready to Rambo through masses of enemies and be a hero. Well, that's what you think is going to happen. Yeah. It's going out like this.
Try putting some rounds right there.
Oh my god, they already landed right on top of my head. These guides tell you to position yourself in hard cover. Okay, but where? I keep getting killed before I can get to hard cover and my bipod never works. Your job is to suppress. Well, whenever I try to suppress, this happens to me. Be defensive. But whenever I am defensive, I just seem to sit around for an hour until my head explodes. The enemy is always eluding me and kills me before I can shoot back. Do you see the issue here? So I want you to create a guide that will turn you from this to this.
On the road. Lots of them on the road. Good kill. Oh yeah, good kill. More guys over here. Yeah, he's up.
I'm AI, man. I'm AI. Fair warning, this is going to be a long video. I have a lot of opinions on this topic, and from this point forward, I will mainly be running B-roll footage and only displaying additional graphics when I feel it's needed. Let's get into it. In this guide, I will take these MG guides a step further. I am not just going to tell you to suppress, I'm going to show you how to suppress. I am not going to tell you to get good positions, I'm going to show you good positions. I'm not going to tell you to reposition, I am going to show you how to reposition. The video is cut up in chapters for you to enjoy. I am willing to claim that the MG is the hardest class to learn, just because it's so different in playstyle than the other classes. It's a huge adjustment. Most classes benefit from staying mobile, being able to turn on the fly and dispatch enemies with ease, then keep pushing. Shotguns and SMGs try to get in close, rifles try and keep some range, but they are all mobile classes that work best when keeping on the move and pushing. This is not the case for the machine gun. This weapon can only be aimed accurately when its bipod is deployed. The only alternative is the Hipfire, which takes time to deploy and will always be slower than someone with another weapon. To boot, the Hipfire is inaccurate, only accurate at 100 meters or more, although I've seen some machine gun players use the Hipfire at longer ranges than this. So you're not only slower on the draw, but you are also significantly less accurate on Hipfire than other weapons. Because of this difficult handling, the MG is naturally a defensive weapon. This is not to say you cannot use it offensively. This simply means an MG will work best when their bipod is deployed with cover and good lines of sight, not flanking or running across a field. This is naturally a big adjustment. You will have to unlearn everything you learned from the other classes in order to be an effective machine gun. This is why a lot of great players don't play machine gun. Their playstyle is very mobile, always flanking and hunting on the move. So it feels like they are going against their own instincts when they play MG because they have to sit still in order to be effective. Many of them try to play MG as they would other classes and are unsuccessful. They soon get frustrated and abandon the MG entirely. But I am here to tell you that an effective machine gun player is a rare and valuable resource. They have the biggest lead spitter out of anyone else, capable of mowing down entire infantry squads and pinning down entire attacks with a single weapon. They can keep the enemy's heads down while the infantry push across open fields, suppression being the only protection your allies may have. They have significant range, able to fire as far as snipers with the proper supervision. A great machine gunner can turn the tide of battle. It may be difficult to adjust, but I promise that the struggle is worth it. Now let's paint a picture of the ideal machine gunner. A machine gunner is always looking for a great position in order to put high amounts of accurate, suppressive fire on the enemy. He will use suppression to cover his teammates as they cross exposed terrain or to suppress an enemy advance. Sometimes he gets caught out and uses his Hipfire to suppress and kill nearby enemies. While great positions are essential to the survivability of the MG, he will sometimes place himself in exposed positions in order to help teammates push. AMG is of no use if it is not firing, and he accepts the significant risk that he will probably die because of it. When he starts firing, he does not stop. He targets anywhere an enemy might be hiding. Hedges, buildings, trees, it does not matter. The second he stops firing, he either repositions or takes cover to reload, then resumes suppression. The machine gunner will use his MG's range to his advantage, firing across long distances with the help of his squad leader's binoculars for maximum effectiveness. Whenever you are looking to play MG, remember the ideal machine gunner. Emulate his strategies, and you will find yourself successful on the battlefield. When most people take up the MG role, they imagine it'll go something like this. When it ends up being more like this. But the MG role is most often not about mowing down dozens of enemies. You will rarely have that opportunity, although when it does happen, it's great. The unpopular truth is the MG is not about killing. It's about supporting your team with accurate suppression so they can push the enemy or for you to slow an enemy advance. If you treat the MG role like you would a rifleman, lying in wait until you see someone, you will be ineffective as an MG. Although there is a time and a place for this playstyle, I will talk about that later. This is what an effective MG is like, laying down suppressive fire on where enemies may be. The problem with this to many people is there's no easy way for you to tell if you are actually suppressing somebody or just shooting at the dirt. This really messes with people. They want to get kills because that is how both they and the game recognize their combat effectiveness. You don't get points for suppression, so they lie in wait, hoping an enemy squad is going to happily skip across a field for them to mow down. But most of the time, they just end up with a bullet in their head. This is what I call a docile MG player, the worst kind of machine gunner. When I was first starting out, I switched between a docile MG who would try to wait for these moments and an MG who would fire wildly at everything. I guarantee an MG who suppresses will be more effective than a docile MG. I may not get points for it, but I definitely help my team a lot more. So, if you are going to the MG class for these incredible kill streaks, it may not be the class for you. It's a support role. Freedom of movement is the concept of your team being able to go wherever they need to accomplish their objectives. Freedom of movement is best accomplished through fire superiority, in which the MG plays a massive role. An enemy suppressed cannot see anything and will be unable to catch your teammates maneuvering around them. A MG's overall purpose is to establish and maintain freedom of movement while denying the enemy their freedom of movement through suppression. A enemy team that is denied freedom of movement is easily outmaneuvered, outflanked, and destroyed. There are two ways to suppress as the MG: covering fire and suppression. Suppression is delaying or denying the enemy advance through regular, high volumes of fire at enemies or their suspected positions. Covering fire is suppression, but used as a way to distract the enemy and to keep their heads low as your infantry advances. There are three schools of thought on how to properly use the MG. Burst fire, as to maintain accuracy and vision for the MG. Spray and pray, to put the highest amount of suppression possible on the enemy and not shooting at all, to coax the enemy into a false sense of security and ambush them at the opportune time. Which one is the correct way to play? Well, I can confidently say all of them are wrong. The answer is it's all situational. Sometimes it's best to lie in wait, sometimes it's appropriate to burst fire, and sometimes it is most appropriate to hold down the left mouse button and pray for headshots. Now we will go through each method, explain why they are wrong by themselves, and also show when and where is the right time to use these methods and when not to. Let's start with the most hated method of all. The docile MGs don't shoot at all. I've already explained why being a docile MG is not effective. You trade your team's freedom of movement in return for a few more kills. You hope that the enemy will run into an open field for you to gun them down, but most of the time you won't see them. They stick to the cover and concealment of the map to avoid your deadly gaze. And the more you wait, the more freedom of movement you are giving to the enemy team and simultaneously denying your own team. However, there is a time and a place for this method. Use this method when holding down choke points, like roads that lead to an objective. When you have a tight angle that cannot easily be outflanked, it may be better to wait for enemies to come out rather than just shooting that tight angle. I may catch some flack for this, but this is also effective when you have no idea where the enemies are. This is rare in Hell Let Loose, but there are times on defense when my teammates see nothing. There are no pings, there are no markers, and there are no gunshots nearby. With no indicators of where the enemy might be, and in a good position, do not shoot. You are squandering a good position for most likely nothing. A position your enemies will watch even after they have killed you. Wait for an indicator before shooting. This leads me into my next takedown. Spray and pray. This is the most popular method. The internet wisdom of Reddit will tell you to hold down the trigger and pray for headshots. Fire at anywhere you suspect enemies are hiding. Bushes, trees, hedges, buildings, it does not matter. Just give them lead. Reddit will tell you that your rounds per match is all that matters as an MG. Some are very adamant that this is the only way to play MG. Anyone who says any different just does not know what they are talking about. They are wrong. The problem with this method is it's based on luck. There is no easy way to know when enemies are suppressed or not. Is there an enemy in that tree line? You could be suppressing the entire enemy team, or just a bunch of trees. And probably the biggest downside of this method is it's the best way for you to die quickly, as your loud gun and constant tracers lead right to where you are. Listen to me when I say this. Spray and pray should be used as a desperate measure to distract, suppress, or kill an enemy. Spray and pray should not be the first, but the last method to switch to because of the inaccuracy and exposure to you it causes. Burst fire method. Burst fire is the best form of suppression because you maintain your accuracy while limiting your exposure. Accuracy is especially important because it determines how close to the enemy you hit, which affects how blurred their screen is from the suppression. The closer, the better. The method is the most ideal method, but it's not the only method to be used. Sometimes it's best to hold that choke point down, or when you are desperate, spray and pray. Lastly, burst firing is the best way to kill enemies outright. Create a wall of fire for them to walk into, or walk the burst fire into them, like so. It's important to note that while I have named some situations in which to use these methods, this is not all the situations you will encounter. It's all situational and up to you what to do. My hope is to create a foundation for you to base your gameplay and build off of it. No matter how good of an MG you are, you will occasionally end up in a gunfight out of position. To try and position, then shoot, is impossible, so you must hip fire. Hip firing is a useful tool. Great machine gunners can hip fire in excess of 100 meters when in a pinch. To hip fire accurately, all you need to know is that the recoil of the MG will naturally move up and to the left as you fire, and the longer you hold down the trigger, the more inaccurate you will be. Pull your mouse down and away from the recoil to be more accurate, although this is more difficult than it looks. Fire in short bursts. Also, understand you can suppress an enemy to stall them, then run away and reposition elsewhere. The aim of the MG in this situation is to survive and not necessarily kill the enemy. MG Hipfire is one of the best tools to clear buildings. Spray relentlessly around corners as you make your slow advance. Remember to control your recoil and you will catch sneaky players running into your bullets. Machine gunners are a support role, and they are made infinitely more effective when they communicate with their teammates. Here I will show you some etiquette to encourage communication in your squad. The other members of your squad should be encouraged to ping whenever they see enemies. After all, 6 pairs of eyes are better than 1. Saying something at the beginning of the match like, "Hey guys, I'm playing MG, so if you see an enemy, please ping them for me so I can keep their heads down," does wonders for your effectiveness of your squad. Communication is a two-way street. Try and coordinate when your squad mates are trying to move, and cover their advance as best you can. "Hey guys, I'll try and cover your movements with the MG, just tell me when you're pushing." A squad that can coordinate suppressive fire with their pushes is going to be infinitely more effective. On the defense, try and coordinate where to place your MG with your team. Another squad member may find a great place for you to position yourself. It is rare when your squad leader will have the time to spot for you as an MG, but I have done it before, and the binoculars teamed up with an MG is a deadly combination. If you can make it happen, ask the SL to simply ping and you should shoot at the pings he gives. This will allow you to provide intense and accurate suppression from even long ranges. I want to make a quick note here about public matches. If you are playing alone, trying to communicate with randoms, that can be a frustrating affair. This is where I would recommend joining a community to play with. Most of the communities are friendly, and you will feel more like a member of a team than you do as a random in a public match. In Hell Let Loose, indicators are extremely important to find out where the enemy is. It's the top priority for a machine gunner after obtaining a firing position to locate indicators and use them to direct accurate and suppressive fires on the enemy quickly and effectively. The first and most important tip for finding indicators is the map. Constantly look at your map and the area around you for indicators of enemies. Helmet markers and pings are helpful, and the dead friendly icon can help for you to see where friendlies are being killed, and thus where enemies are likely to be. Communication, as covered in the previous chapter, is also a very important indicator and arguably the most effective indicator. The sound of enemy weapons firing will also give away their location and give you a general direction to watch for them. Knowing where to set up your MG and when to move is one of the best ways to increase your survivability as a machine gun. The longer you are alive, the longer you can suppress the enemy. So, let's cover positioning. The ideal position is one that will give you great lines of sight that provide adequate cover, concealment, or simply somewhere enemies rarely look. Enemies will always look at windows of buildings and hard cover first, so asymmetrical positions are a great way of increasing your survivability. Here is one such position on the Foy map. Here I can see from many different angles. I may be exposed, but enemies will not see me for a while. You can end up finding many great positions through videos, veteran players, and just messing around on the maps. I find the best positions are ones that provide great cover, great lines of sight, and where the enemy does not often look. However, you can only ever spend so long in a position before you are discovered. In order to survive, you will have to reposition. This is where alternative positions come into play. When do you reposition? This is a hard question, and while I will give you some general pointers, it sometimes just comes down to general game knowledge and visceral gut reaction. If you get shot at, or you're about to get shot at, reposition. But you're not always going to know when someone is gunning for you. That is why I generally reposition after I have fired a respectable amount, constantly switching back and forth to limit my visibility and my exposure. However, if I am far away from the fight and suppressing from long distances, I can be more confident that I will not receive a quick headshot to the face. Of course, I am taking a risk, and I can always be unlucky and a sniper takes off my head. But if it's that good of a position, I might take that risk and stay. It's all situational. There are 4 MGs in this game: the Browning 30 cal, the MG 34, the MG 42, and the DP 27. The Browning is for the United States Army. It has a slow and consistent fire rate. It offers higher damage and high suppression at the cost of rate of fire. The Browning should be used for suppression regardless of this fact. Overall, it ranks about third, I think, in my rankings, just because it doesn't have the fire rate of the German machine guns, and it's not the DP27, so it gets a bit above that. The MG34 on the German side is fun, but ultimately overshadowed by its brother, the MG42. Like the Browning, it has a slower firing rate than the MG42, but it has higher damage. I recommend using the MG42 once unlocked, but this MG will do, and ultimately I would say it's the second best MG in the game next to the MG42. The MG42 is the best MG in the game. It is very easy to suppress and lock down entire sectors with this weapon without giving the enemy the chance to breathe. The impressive fire rate easily makes up for its damage values and performs suppression the best out of any weapon in the game. The MG42 was unintentionally buffed in this last update, a significant bug that does not allow you to hear the MG42's gunshots when being shot at by this beast. It will also be very difficult to see the tracers of the MG42. This makes the MG42 even stronger than it was before, however, it is likely that it will be fixed in later patches. And then we're at the DP27. Unfortunately, the DP27 has a significant disadvantage to its counterparts. While the other MGs hold a staggering 250 rounds per drum, the DP27 only holds a negligible 47 rounds. It has a slow fire rate as well, making it the worst MG in the game by far. Its one saving grace is that it's a lot easier to hipfire with, making an aggressive MG as the Soviets a possibility. Use this weapon for suppression, but understand its critical flaws, and you can be a bit more mobile with this machine gun. Hell Let Loose maps have a lot of variety. From city fighting to long grassy fields, there are quite a few things to keep in mind when playing different maps. On maps like Kursk and Foy, where there are long distances with minimal cover, your role as an MG is going to be pivotal. With a lack of cover or concealment, your teammates will rely on you to keep the enemy's heads down while they push. Try and find a nice building with some elevation to take full advantage of the openness of these maps. On maps like St. Marie-Église and Dumont, the enemy will have reliable concealment like hedges to sneak about. However, their route of advance is quite predictable, at times as a result. Try and figure out based on indicators where they are likely to come from, then set your MG up to block off that road or field that they may come down. When you are bogged down in city fighting, the effects of your suppression is going to be drastically reduced. It may be prudent to regulate yourself to holding down checkpoints and flanks with your mobile teammates' push. When you're playing on maps like Carentan or Stalingrad, you're going to be bogged down in the city fighting, and the effects of your suppression will be drastically reduced. It may be prudent to regulate yourself to holding down checkpoints and flanks while your mobile teammates push. As an MG player, you do not get points for doing your job, which is suppressing. You can only blow up trucks, and that's not going to get you the points you want. Your only other way of getting the game to recognize your effectiveness is going to be through building things, which is also not your job. Leave it to the engineers. And the last is you get effectiveness for killing people, but that's part of your job, but not your main thing. I mean, you're suppressing, and if you hit somebody, great, but you're not just sitting around waiting for kills or anything like that. You are actively suppressing and contributing to the team. Otherwise, you're going to be a docile machine gunner. So, with that said, the game basically does not reward you for doing your job. So how do you know when you're effective? Well, a telltale sign is when your teammates thank you for your suppression, or when the enemy hit you so much they artillery you. And sometimes you just know because you know where the enemies are and where they're pushing, and you know you're going to be giving them a hard time. As you follow this guide and play MG in the game, you will start to get a firm grasp on the role and understand when you are being effective and when you are not. Most of the time, when you are not in position, you are not effective. But understand that sometimes you just may not know, and you have to rely on the tips I've given you so far and your experience in game to guide you. Hell Let Loose's Bipod sucks ass. It seems that if the surface is not perfectly flat, you are going to have trouble bipodding. This is a very much a experience thing, and something that you're going to be able to get better at as you play the MG. Trust me, I know it's frustrating to see an entire enemy team rush across a field and you can't do anything about it because the surface you're trying to bipod on is just a few inches taller for you to fire over. Or when the bipodding just refuses to work at all. But I am not going to go over every surface in the game and when you can bipod on and what you can bipod on. That would make this video even longer than it needs to be. But I will leave you with some good tips that may help. If the surface is pointed toward the ground or up to the sky, there is a good chance you cannot bipod on it. You can bipod on roofs and other objects, however, even if they may not be flat, by proning and bipoding diagonally on them. Lastly, when in doubt, get as close to the object as you can and spam the C key while you turn and move until you get it. Rinse and repeat. Experience will eventually allow you to know what you can and cannot bipod on. This is a part of the video where I'm going to get a bit more meta, talking about possible counter arguments to this video's ideas and the machine gunner role. There is a certain part of this community that argue suppression does not matter because A, death does not matter, so people do not care to slow down when they're being shot at, and B, you can still shoot at the center of the screen while suppressed, so suppression does not matter. The latter is pretty easily debunked. If you shoot at the center of your screen and ignore the crap going on with your character, yes, you will still be accurate. But good luck seeing anything with the trunk goggles on. My point is suppression is useful because it makes it a lot more difficult to see somebody. That gives your teammates a good advantage in their firefights, and therefore you're doing your job. And then B, the first point, it's going to be a bit more nuanced. I mean, yes, death does not matter in Hell Let Loose like it would in Squad. It only delays the enemy by the time it takes for them to respawn and lug it back to where they were. And sometimes killing an enemy might actually help them, as now they can teleport any number of places across the map. But if your suppression negatively affects the enemy's vision and therefore combat effectiveness, and it does do that, and your hell of bullets will slow them down because they can't just run through that, then your suppression is doing a lot for your team collectively. Therefore, I would disagree with this point. Hey everybody, a bit of a channel update and a bit of things I want to talk about real quick. This is completely ad-lib, so I'm sorry if I ramble on. But I wanted to start by saying sorry I haven't been around. I know that I did promise that I would make videos, I think weekly or so, and basically just life got ahead of me. I got a new job, I started doing bad in school, so I needed to kind of rearrange my priorities, and I also have, a dog and a girlfriend that I want to spend time with. So between those 3 or 4 things, life is busy right now. I either have to choose between making something that I like and kind of doing some self-expression, or playing video games, which gives me enjoyment. And so I'm trying to split the time right now, and I just may or may not fall off again. So I don't want to give any promises because the last time I gave promises, I didn't follow through on them. But I will say that I am trying to produce more videos because I think I have more interesting ideas to put out there. And secondly, I wanted to say sorry for the decline of the quality of the video about halfway through. I know that I had a lot of cool graphics going on, and then all of a sudden it was just me talking over some bad B footage. But basically, I've tried to work on this project for about a 3-month period, and on and off, to be fair, but it's just been production hell. I'm very disorganized in how I do my editing, and I want to make the video as good as possible for you guys to be able to understand everything I'm saying and to continue watching the video. However, I just keep going back to the drawing board and reorganizing. And so, without rambling, I just want to say sorry for the decline in the quality of the video, and in the future I think I'm going to create some sort of organization system to where I can more easily produce videos that don't take 3 months for a 30-minute video, right? So anyway, I hope you guys stick around. Please comment, subscribe, share with your friends, anything that will make this channel more active, because every time I see a comment or I see an extra like on the video or even just another little view, that motivates me to make more videos. I mean, really, if just one person like takes something from this video, I will be happy. It's not a form of greed for me. It's not something that I want to make money off of. Really, I just want to have some self-expression and create something that I think is nice, that will help people out in their gameplay in the game. So anyway, that is the video. Sorry for rambling on a bit at the end, but that's all I have to say. Goodbye.